For us, in the work that we do through Future Ready Schools, it's about the high-level learnings that can occur with those. Something like a virtual or augmented reality really completely displaces the image in a textbook that we're kind of used to bring things to life. And the brain functions differently when things come to life like that as opposed to a static image. And so seeing a lot of that. As it relates to the computer science stuff and some of the robots and things that kids are now programming, it's not just about the ability to program or to learn computer science. It's about higher order thinking. And to see first grade, second grade, kindergarten starting to learn how to sequentially program certain things to make the little robot drive around, which they think of course is the coolest thing, has really taken off. As we work with school leaders across the country, there's so many different facets that really impact moving digital and high quality teaching and learning. But what we found foundational to all of those pieces is really two pieces. It's leadership and it's school culture. Having been to so many different schools around the country, what I can tell you is I've seen schools that have it all. They're like 2 to 1. They've got the iPad and the Chromebook, and their kids seem to have it all, but they're really not doing many innovative things. They're successful, so to say, in the traditional metrics because of where they are, because of the population they serve, and those kids would be successful in virtually any environment. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves on a lot of those areas. But I've also seen the flip side, places that have limited connectivity, places that have limited devices, but they're doing amazingly innovative things. And so sometimes I think we get into the notion of we just buy all this stuff and now we're innovative because we've got the robots and the Chromebooks and all these things, but it's what you do with it. The foundation, though, is leadership and school culture. The school culture really plays the role there. With all the schools that we've worked, we've never seen a district or a school do tremendous things, break through the mold, break through the walls, that doesn't have dynamic leadership and a school culture, really a culture of innovation, a culture where teachers can take risks. In a toxic school culture, teachers aren't going to take risks. In an environment where a teacher doesn't feel that they can try something new, they're not going to step outside the box. And so in those environments, the initiative will fail. You could have the greatest planned initiative in the world, but in a toxic school environment, it's not going to work. And so foundational to creating schools that are future ready is leadership and school culture. An example of leadership and school culture really make a difference. I think about Talladega County Schools in Alabama. They're a district where 6 or 7 years ago, one of the teachers was hired, and she refers and tells a story about people asking her, why in the world would you ever go work there? I'd hate to say they were a laughing stock, but I'm not sure what other word to use. People didn't want to go there. They got out as soon as they could to go work for another district. The leadership in that district underwent a change, and the leadership there, Suzanne Lacey is the superintendent, brought in a leadership team that empowered people. They built people up. They also realized that their kids had significant needs, and they started things like funds for coats for kids that didn't have them, or breakfast for kids that needed them. And they created a culture where kids wanted to be and attendance increased. They created an environment where teachers wanted to be, where teachers were empowered, and people all of a sudden wanted to start to get in there. But it's not just a happy-go-lucky, feel-good story of everybody, let's just rah-rah each other. When you look at over time, their graduation rates went from 68%, and over, I want to say, it was about a 6 or 7 year period, this past year, they were at roughly 94%. And when you look at that, that's because of leadership and school culture. When you create, even the whole, if you look at the national thoughts on school choice and those kinds of things, and some states wrestling that, and the federal level conversation being now, my mantra on that as somebody who faced that as a principal is let's build the schools that every kid wants to come to, and that's not going to be a problem. They are creating schools that every kid wants to go to. And so what's happened, their attendance rates have gone up, their discipline rates have gone down, and their graduation rates have steadily climbed over the last 6 or 7 years to now they're graduating over 9 and 10 kids, where a few years ago it was less than 7 and 10. And so leadership and school culture in Talladega County has been a tremendous example of how that shift can shift everything there. And so it is a really good question, because on one side, some things that you see around the nation is sometimes you're seeing these districts take out long-term bonds to buy things like devices that might last 3, 4, 5 years if they're lucky. So one of the things we really work with is, one is procurement, and it's how are you purchasing devices, using taxpayer money well, getting the best bang for your buck. But the flip side is, as you buy devices, what's your plan 3 years from now, 4 years from now to replace what you're buying before the original device even shows up? We see where districts are getting one-time funding, grant funding, funding from the state, they pass a bond and those kinds of things. It's all well and good, but you've got to ask, once this money runs out, once these devices are through their shelf life, what's next? Before you start investing in all this. Because if you can't answer that question, you can be in a really bad spot 3 or 4 years down the road. So the sustainability is key. The other pieces, that's the financial sustainability, but we also talk a bit about pedagogical sustainability. As teachers turn over, as your veterans retire, as new teachers come in, we can talk about the shift in teaching and learning, but our teachers are also changing over time. And so how do you keep the new learning styles and things that you're really looking to do to make learning more personal, sustainable as teachers shift over time as well? And you typically don't get that type of turnover compared to admin, but that's a piece to it. And so you have the financial and you have the pedagogical sustainability, but the other one's also the political sustainability, where you have school boards turnover or superintendents with the average shelf life of 3.5 years. And I hate to say it like that, but that's what the research shows. How do you make sure that you're making sustainable decisions in that area as well? So you get a couple board members that change over or a new superintendent, the great work can continue and doesn't come to a screaming halt.